Hi, welcome to Ask the Manager. We're at Town Hall today because there's construction down at Parker Road, so made the trip easier for Kevin, and here we are. And we have our new fire chief with us. We have Seth Colby. He replaced retired Jim Vona, and we're happy to have you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, Seth, could you just tell us a little bit? I know you grew up in Shrewsbury, and I think you went to school around the time of my son's, but did you?
I did. I grew up in Shrewsbury. My parents were here. Both sets of grandparents lived in Shrewsbury. Actually, one of my grandfathers worked for the town. He worked for the water department and was a call firefighter, which got my father involved as a call firefighter. And then, so I guess I grew up around it. I think that's probably where my interest came. But yeah, I was raised here. I graduated from Shrewsbury High in '94.
My son, John.
Yep.
Oh, and then you went on the department soon after that. Did you go to college first, or what?
I was actually in college.
You sort of went to college.
I sort of went. Yes, sort of went to college. So I joined when I graduated high school. I joined as a call firefighter. Did that for a couple of years. I took the civil service test. A bunch of people were saying, "Oh, you should take it. You're going to have to take it 2-3 times. You're never going to, it's going to take years to get on." So I took it while I was in college, and then I actually got called up the summer in between my junior and senior year.
So that must have disturbed your mother that you didn't finish college right away. Or was she confident that you would do it?
I said maybe at the time. I think she's happy now.
Yeah, it worked out because you did go back and finish.
I did. I was going to school for business administration at Worcester State, and I withdrew. Didn't go back for the senior year, but then I did part-time. I finished up. I went to Quincy. I got an associate's in fire science. Then I went to Anna Maria, got a bachelor's, and then I got my master's in public administration.
So he didn't do it the easy way, is what he
did.
I took the long path, but I did get there.
So you probably learned more because you were more mature by the time you were finishing. That's what I found. When I went back after nursing school and I went back, I thought, oh, I should have listened.
Yeah. We're doing college visits with my daughter Alexa, and I'm like, man, I wish I could go back. I'd love to spend 4 years just learning about something or stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And when we toured campuses with our sons, I kept thinking, why didn't I do this?
Yeah, exactly.
Why did I go to nursing school? I went to, a hospital building. I could have been on a campus. But you achieved that, and then you now teach everybody else. Because didn't you teach at the academy, or do you still teach at the academy?
I still, a little bit, not nearly as much as I did, but yes, I taught for a long time the recruit program at the academy. On my days off with the shift schedule, you'd have days off during the week, so I could do that. Now the last few years as deputy and now as chief, I do an occasional day on a weekend or in an evening, but not nearly what I used to.
Do you find that you bring that background to our department because you did so much of that teaching?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of twofold. One is that it keeps me current with, keeps me up to date with current practices, which I'm able to certainly bring back. And that's one of the things as a chief, you kind of get away from the day-to-day operations and the hands-on part of it, whereas going now and then to the academy and still teaching that and working with that keeps me kind of up to date on that stuff. But it's a great networking opportunity. And now where I'm predominantly nights and weekends here and there, I'm with other chief officers that are in the same thing, that they want to keep their fingers in it. They want to stay active, but they can't do it Monday through Friday. So it's a great networking opportunity, and we actually get a lot of information unrelated to what we're teaching in the kind of the downtime and at lunch, where we're able to talk about other things in our departments and bounce things off each other.
So that's pretty good too.
Yes.
Is there an annual meeting of chiefs or quarterly meetings or anything?
We have this FCAM, the Fire Chiefs Association of Massachusetts, and they meet monthly.
So it's always in Massachusetts.
Yes. Yep. There's a international which there's a New England chapter. They have different chapters throughout the country, but the Mass chiefs, we meet once a month, and
Oh, that's good.
and again, it's a great networking opportunity, but it also is where we talk about the legislation and things on a state level.
Don't you find, and you probably find this too as manager, when you go to those meetings within the state, you realize how strong managing the town, how strong the town is, how strong our own fire department is. I know there's always things that we can do better, but don't you find that you can be more proud of what you have happening within your own department?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. You hear if there's the challenges that we face, it's good to hear we're not the only ones facing those challenges. But absolutely, yeah. Then you hear some of the problems that other departments and other communities face, and it's like we are really lucky to be here, and we don't have those problems.
Yeah. So, since you became our town manager, how have you seen our fire department grow?
Well, physically, we've grown, right? We've increased staffing by 8 firefighters since I started, and that is all with the target of having the firefighters be safer when they respond and be able to provide more adequate response to whoever we're serving. Chief Colby's only been in the position for a couple months, but I'm really looking forward to working with him. Chief Vona was an exceptional person to work with as well, but just like I am different than my predecessor. I look forward to the ideas that Chief Colby and I have already talked about. I mean, looking broadly and going back to your prior comment, the Shrewsbury Fire Department certainly one of the top departments in Massachusetts, in just a narrow pocket. And we look forward to, continuing to be progressive in how we approach not just the emergency response that we do, but also the emergency management planning. And I think one of the biggest areas that Chief Colby will be working on is, along with Deputy Chief Weigold now, is the inspections and fire prevention, and because we definitely have some work to do in those areas. So,
when you talk about staffing, where are we now ranked as far as so many per 1,000 residents? We're still below, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're in much better shape than we are. I mean, it's always a struggle to. I mean, it's a positive that Shrewsbury continues to grow, right? But that's the challenge, is to keep all the services up to meet the demands as they increase. So right now we have 45 firefighters, uniformed firefighters, and then the deputy chief and myself, so 47 total. 44 of them are on shifts, so we have 4 shifts of 11 that are on, and then we have a operations manager that's that 45th position. So we work down one, so there's always 10 firefighters on duty at a given time around the clock. So
how many in each station?
So we have and that was the 8 firefighters that were mentioned. That actually gave us the opportunity to promote 8 firefighters to the rank of lieutenant. Mm-hmm. So now we have at station 2 and 3, we have a lieutenant and 2 firefighters on each of those engines, which prior to that we only had 2 firefighters, which is a very unsafe condition,
right,
and a very inefficient. Mm-hmm. Right. When you add one person to the company, to that group, you don't just get a 50% increase. You get more of an efficiency than it doesn't go from what 2 people can do to 3, but that group of 3 becomes much more efficient, in that they're able to get their own water supply. Right, when we had 2 firefighters, we would go and what we would refer to as abandon the pump, which is against every safe practice in the world. But we would go, and there'd be 2 firefighters, so they would go, and we have tank water on the truck, and they would go and they would engage the pump. They'd set the pressure. They'd put their their masks on and pull the hose, and the two of them would go into the building with nobody outside, with nobody on the pump, with no water supply hooked up to a fire hydrant. So by adding that third firefighter, now they can have somebody that they can connect to a hydrant on their own to get a water supply. They have somebody that's running the pump so that if there is a problem that they can address it. So it's a much safer and much more efficient operation.
And I know it's a long time, but I'm not even sure. You might have been in grammar school when the fight was to have more than one firefighter at the Edgemere station, because they would have just one firefighter, and it was just so unsafe. And it was a big achievement to get us to 2 in Edgemere. And so as you speak, you think of, those numbers keep the firefighters safer. So, and you've brought it up to at least 8 in the time that you've been here. What's the plan going forward? These aren't loaded questions. I haven't talked to anybody about it. I'm just curious.
No, I think long term, there's a couple of goals. Is we still at fire headquarters because we work short, we work down one position that we don't fill when a firefighter is out on vacation.
Right.
A lot of times headquarters has 2 people on that company, so that's still a 2-person company with the captain. So the captain is the shift commander. They're in the car, and then there's 2 firefighters on either the ladder truck or the engine, whatever responds out of headquarters. So long term, I think the goal would be to have that always be a 3-person company, not just when we have the luxury of
Right.
a full shift. And there's a couple of things we've talked about on how we can get there, and there's some other things in the works with potentially with dispatch and stuff. Because right now we have one of those 10 firefighters that's always on is on the desk as a dispatcher. They're the ones that are answering the phone and the radio and all of that. So that's something that's in the works.
Logic is to have a dispatcher.
Right, and we'd be able to put that firefighter on, and that would make that a 3-person company all the time.
So I hope this isn't a bad word, but would you ever have one dispatch station or one dispatch for fire and police? So
Yeah, that's,
I know that was talked about at one
yeah,
time.
that is still the direction that we're moving in. It just makes a lot of sense.
Does that make both departments stronger?
Yeah, it unifies our communication, so I think it does make it stronger. It gives us, a more robust dispatching operation, with, dispatchers and supervisors and, more people on every shift that can cover a wide variety of calls. Or like right now, the dispatcher, the firefighter that's dispatching can't, sort of flex up if we have 4 police calls going on to support those dispatching operations. They're just for fire, right? So, and vice versa. So we had a major fire and another incident, where we had, engines moving in different directions. We still only have 1 dispatcher. So consolidating, and having the right number of people per shift and more flexibility is something that would make us, kind of like the chief said, with just adding 1 firefighter, it's greater than just moving an additional dispatcher per shift within the police station. It allows you to do so many more things, keep everyone safer at the same time.
And these are things that have been talked about for many years. These aren't like new concepts. And I'm just going on recall when I ask those kinds of questions. But the firefighters do more than just put out fires. I mean, you go to accidents, you are first responders, so when the ambulance is called, firefighters are usually the first ones there. Talk a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it was still called the fire department, but fires is probably the smallest part of our job.
Which we're lucky that it's the smallest part of your job.
We absolutely are.
Yeah.
We do about, the last few years, we average about 120 to 130 fires a year, but that's various. Some of them are building fires, some of them are outside fires, car fires. We are very, very fortunate, and I think one of our strengths that we've had for a long time, since before I was here, is the fact that we have 3 stations throughout town. We're geographically spread out, and we're able to have a very quick response time, which is what helps us have not a lot of fires, but keep the fires smaller, right? We have, last year, our average response time was 3 minutes and 45 seconds to every location in Shrewsbury. That was the average response time for the first arriving engine.
Which is impressive.
Amazing.
Which is, the national standard is 5 minutes for a first arriving company, and we were doing it in 3 minutes and 45 seconds from time of notification to be on scene. So,
How did
seconds.
you improve that? More traffic, but your response time's better.
Yeah, I don't know. We're that much more efficient in getting. I mean, a lot of that is what they refer to as turnout time. The quicker you get out of the station,
Yep.
right? And I think that was right to the point of unified dispatch and creating more efficiencies. Like
So
right
now
now,
the firefighters sleep in their boots with their coat on.
they're in the truck already, ready to go. No, but a lot of that is right is how we lay it out, how the equipment is laid out, how quick we're able to get the information relayed. Because right now we're essentially on medical calls and vehicle accidents with injuries. We're actually involving 3 dispatch centers, because we have the police that take the primary 911 call, then we're involved for the fire side of it, and we're transferring a call to UMass EMS to their dispatch to kind of triage it in EMD, which emergency medical dispatch, the call. So they may be talking to the caller and giving them treatments that they can be doing to help the person prior to EMS arriving. So we're actually running 3. So the more we can consolidate it down and the less moving parts, the more efficient we become.
How is that contract with UMass going related to the ambulance?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll say broadly speaking, UMass has stabilized their staffing, and we had a rough period after COVID, just like so many other different business lines or industries did, with hiring and getting equipment, and that stuff is mostly behind us. We are in the first year of a 5-year agreement. It is quite different. The one difference is we are paying them,
Which I can't figure out why.
Well, the funding that we've tied to is basically for them to cover the cost of an ambulance over a 5-year period, which is very expensive. It's like we're paying about $80,000 a year, around that. And that's what it costs to, so that's how we directly tied it in. And that plan also took away the town's inability to start its own ambulance service. So we're looking at the relationship now as more of a partnership, because the more trucks or ambulances that we have in the region, right? Shrewsbury doesn't have its own at this point. If we can add a truck and get our program started and be more complementary to not only UMass, but our, fellow municipalities and mutual aid with other departments who have EMS services already, we'll be able to service Shrewsbury residents and the region, which is part of our charge as well, better. So it's a much more collaborative relationship through this 5-year agreement. Yes, we are paying money, but I think the most important part is moving in that direction of, us considering EMS ourselves. And it's not going to be, our goal isn't necessarily going to be to eliminate the partnership or the contracts with UMass. It's to augment and, put some of our own resources in place. So that relationship probably in the next 5-year agreement will be even different than this one.
And so how does that impact staffing if you get to that?
We would end up adding additional staffing.
Right.
Most likely. We have right now about a third of the firefighters are EMTs. I think we have about 18 or so that are EMTs. It's not a requirement of the job currently. Anybody that has it did it voluntarily. They went and got it and got the extra training because they wanted to be able to provide a better service to the residents. Like you said before, fires are a relatively small part of our job. Almost 3/4 of the calls we go on have some medical component, whether it be strictly a medical emergency in someone's home, whether it be a vehicle accident that now needs medical treatment, or some kind of a rescue that needs medical treatment. But about almost 3/4 of our call have some kind of a medical component in them.
Yeah, and the one difference with, staffing up on the EMS side or being able to provide EMS services is there is actually a business line there with a revenue source that we can plan for and rely upon in covering, in most cases, all, but definitely the vast majority of those additional expenses that we'll experience in staffing and equipment for EMS services.
And Westboro seems to do it successfully. I mean, and their ambulance is coming down Route 9 all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Westboro's running 4 ambulances on a daily basis, so they're keeping busy. Northborough is the same thing. Northborough just got a SAFER grant. I don't know if you saw it. It was in the news. They just got a SAFER grant for 8 additional firefighters. And that's actually the SAFER grant is a federal grant, and that's actually how four out of the 8 firefighters that we were able to add came through a SAFER grant, where we start off with federal funding to fund those positions, and then over the course of each year, the town picks up one more salary until we've phased it all into our budget.
So who writes the grants for the fire department?
The SAFER grant, there's a series of people. We have several that do it. Right now, Pat O'Neill is doing most of the grants. The SAFER grant that we got, that was back in 2019 that we received that SAFER grant. That one was written by Mike Borwick. He did a great job on that.
It's interesting about even that. I mean, when you talk history, we used to have like one person in town, maybe 2, that wrote the grants for everything. And then how, I don't know if it's that people are more educated, more comfortable with the grant application, but now it involves so many more people across the town.
Well, in the fire department in itself, if you look at it, the level of education the firefighters have now, formal education, higher education is amazing.
Yeah.
It really is. So many firefighters have bachelor's degrees before they come to us. A significant percentage are pursuing or have master's degrees, and those are all related to, public administration, mainly on the master's degree side, which makes us better at the leadership and in the grant writing and the budget management. But, the bachelor's degrees are in fire science and related fields, which, is complementary to the traditional academy training that makes them more knowledgeable. And the chief can talk about this much better than I can, but, more knowledgeable about fire itself and what it does and how it spreads and how we react to it most effectively.
So they're also, therefore, better equipped to be writing all these grants.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, for sure.
And that changes all the time. The town has grown so much, not just in population, but what do you call it? The daily population, when you have all the businesses working and everything, which makes the town so much busier. And that's our society anyhow. So the firefighters, just like the police and other departments, the way you have to increase the numbers, it's all relative. You have a busier town, daytime busy, even busier. So those numbers naturally grow with that. Sometimes I think the public may not understand. It's not like we're back in the 70s where it was a quiet town. It's a busy place.
Yeah, and it's not just us. Chief Anderson says this probably most frequently out of all of us. It's the regional growth, right? It's the fact that we have Route 20 and Route 9 and, 290. So, certainly Shrewsbury's population has grown and there's continued development interest, but hold all that still, right? The regional growth around us contributes just as much, if not more, to the call volume of the fire department and the police department, than Shrewsbury's growth does by itself.
And I go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, to that, one of the things that we're experiencing more and more are multiple calls at the same time.
Which never happened, really. That was
So
rare.
it's not uncommon to have 2-3 calls that they're all overlapping. And that's one advantage with the additional staffing is when we had 2 firefighters, there was no officer, they were severely understaffed, we'd have to send two trucks on one call in order to get enough firefighters there or to get a supervisor there. By now having an officer, a supervisor on each of those engines and having that extra staff, we're able to better address overlapping calls because we can send one truck with more people on it that can take care of themselves, take care of that incident themselves. And we can have 2-3 calls going on at the same time and be able to accommodate them.
And how has hazmat impacted your department over the years?
So that's another specialty. We're very fortunate. We have 3 hazmat techs on the team that are also members of the state hazmat team. So that's a great resource for us. Not only did they go through the initial training, I think it's close to 500 hours, if not more, to become a hazmat tech. Initially, it's a big commitment, as well as continuing your education every year and getting so many hours to stay current. But by having them on the hazmat team, they're responding, all over the state to incidents and picking up experience that they can then come back and use when we have incidents here, as opposed to just, I took a class and this is what they taught us. They have firsthand real life experience. So it's a great opportunity for us. And it's all paid through the state. So we pay them to go, and then it's all reimbursed through the state. So it's zero cost item to us, and we get the benefit of all that extra experience, which we're very fortunate.
Now, I think when I think of October, I think of police and firefighters going into the schools and educating the children about fire safety. Is that happening this year?
It is. It is. We have what's referred to as the SAFE program, the Student Awareness of Fire Education. That's a program. It's a statewide program. We've been doing it for years. It's been several decades now that we've been doing it for. It's been very effective, right? And we've actually found over the years that by educating the children on fire safety, that they'll actually go home and, I'll say, nag their parents, right? And teach their parents some of these things. So we've actually seen it kind of educate the whole family. But it's a great program. We get a grant through the state, through the Department of Fire Services, and we go in, and our goal is to have a firefighter in every elementary and middle school classroom every year.
That's really impressive. What about equipment? Now, you have equipment that you need for the lake because you're involved on the lake rescuing people, and you have all the rest of your equipment. How has that been evolving? Because you have more equipment, right?
We do, and we have more equipment than we had when we rebuilt the stations.
So you're telling
it's
us
been
it
almost
doesn't
20
fit?
years. It's
Like
a subtle
the truck
hint.
didn't
Dropping
fit?
a subtle hint. Yeah. No, it's been almost 20 years since we redid we built a new headquarters. We relocated and built a new Station 3.
Do you know what that means? Sorry to interrupt. It's going to be paid off in 2026.
Oh, see, that's the good news.
That's the good news.
But now you'll be able to have room for the addition.
Yeah, but we have added a lot since then. We have an additional engine that we didn't have, which we were able to keep as a spare, and that it's been it's proven. It's in. We have one, so we have 2 spare engines. One is at headquarters, and one is at Station 3 on Centec. We've added a brush truck that we didn't have before. We added a boat. We have a small rescue boat that we didn't have before. So we have added additional equipment. And again, it's just to keep up with the demands. We found that having a second spare engine has come in. It's been vitally important. How we got by without it, I don't know. But again, with the increase in call volume, the the wear and tear on the trucks. And we're fortunate we have a great in-house mechanic, and the preventative maintenance on our trucks is excellent.
And your in-house mechanic is?
You know this, and
But I want
Joe-
everybody else to.
Joe Milos.
Joe Milos.
He does a great job. And we keep, traditionally in Shrewsbury, we keep our apparatus longer than a lot of places. We tend to, when we initially spec them out, we tend to put a bigger motor in, we put bigger brakes and all of that. And
So you do it right the first time.
we do it right the first time, and then we get the life out of them. Most of our apparatus, by the time it'll go from front line to a reserve piece, and then once it's finally retired out, it's typically at or just beyond the 30-year mark. The NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, used to have, they were a little more rigid than they are now, but it was 15 years as a front line, and then at 20 years it would be retired. You could do from new to 15 years could be a frontline apparatus. Then for the next 5 years, it could be a reserve, and then you would retire it. And they found that there was so many differences between communities and how they're maintained, because some places will buy the cheapest fire truck they can, do no maintenance on it, and then dump it.
Really?
Whereas, we spend a little more on the front end, but we also maintain them, and we get almost double the life out of them. And the standard has since been relaxed to now it's kind of more on a case-by-case basis, that if you're doing what you need to and taking care of them, then you keep them longer.
The last big investment, well, it's currently under investment right now, is a new rescue vehicle, and the chief can talk a little bit more about the differences with our current vehicle, but they're very expensive, right? Like, and I'm not saying that
Like
in
buying a
negative.
house.
Yeah, it is. Well,
Or it used to be like
yeah,
buying a house.
yeah.
Now they cost more.
well, like the rescue, chief, correct me if I'm wrong. The rescue truck that we're buying is as expensive as the tower when we bought it, or maybe a little bit more expensive.
It's actually more.
Yeah.
It's more expensive now. So the tower, it was our ladder truck, our
Big one.
Tower, it's a 2007, and that was $730,000 when we bought it in 2007. To replace that same truck, you would be at about 1.7 million now, almost $1 million more.
Beachfront property.
Yeah. Yep.
So tell us, when you say rescue truck, what is a rescue truck?
So basically, it's a big toolbox. So the rescue truck we have now is what's referred to as a rescue pumper. So it's a 2002, and that was when those kind of became the thing to do. It was an engine that had larger compartments and more storage for more specialized tools on them, but it still had the hose, the ladder, the pump, and everything that you would have on a normal fire engine. The rescue that we're going to replace it with is still going to have a pump on it. It's still going to have a water tank on it, but it's not going to have the ladders, and it's not going to have that whole big hose bed in the back. So we'll be able to use it. It's basically going to be all compartments and all storage. So we'll be able to have more space for rescue equipment. So we'll have more capability for vehicle accidents and extrication that way. There'll be some more hazmat equipment on it, because, like you said, hazmat has become more of an issue, just as we have more roadway accidents. And that's most of our hazmats are. We do have some in fixed facilities, but a lot of them are on the roadway. We had a couple over the summer on the lake where we had, a boat. When a boat leaks its gasoline into the lake, that becomes a hazmat, and we have booms that we can put out and contain the spill until it can get cleaned up. And so it's going to have more space to do that. And then we'll take the old rescue that it's replacing will then go and become a reserve engine. And then we'll take a 1994 engine will come out of service at that point. So we get the life out of them. And that truck won't be here, even though it's been ordered. That truck won't be here until probably December of 26.
Wow.
That's our hope, is
So
that we
that's
have it by
2 years.
December of. Yep.
More than 2 years, really.
Yeah.
So does that mean we will at some point need a rescue team? I mean, that's what Worcester has, right?
So rescue has they have a dedicated rescue company. We cross-man. So we actually, the headquarters crew cross-mans 3 different, I'll call them specialty vehicles. So when they either go on the rescue truck, they go on engine 1, or they go on the tower, the ladder truck. And it depends on the call. So if it's a vehicle accident, they take the rescue. If it's a medical call, then they go out in the engine. And I know people always ask, well, how come you take this big fire truck to a medical? It's because even though we've got those three different fire trucks at headquarters, we only have a crew for one of them. So if they were to go out in a pickup truck to go on a medical, and then a fire comes in, there's nobody to get the fire truck to the
Right.
call. So that's why they always go in a fire engine. But so they'll go to car fires or outside fires, medical calls, they take the engine. And then if it's a building fire, fire alarms, they take the ladder truck. So in the future, would we have a dedicated crew on the ladder truck and a dedicated crew on the rescue?
In 20 years?
Probably, but I was just going to say,
Yeah.
we're not talking the next
Right.
few years.
That's
but
not what your priority is today, but it's probably in the
Yes.
future, it wouldn't be surprising.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, right now our goal is to always get that crew to have 3. That will be the first. That'll be the first step. Then we can start looking at manning two different companies out of headquarters.
So what type of, sounds like a foolish question, but what type of rescues do you have on the lake compared to other, do you have the same rescue, not just drowning victims? I mean, you have all sorts of rescues there. Tell us about some of that.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a variety. Certainly, there are a number of boat accidents
More,
every year.
more than before?
I mean, I think this year was better
Oh.
than it's been in the past. I know this year the police, were able to step up patrols. I think, and you could speak better to this, but I believe there was some grant or earmark funding that allowed them to do additional patrols.
Mm-hmm.
I know Flint Pond was always a challenge because the police boat didn't fit under,
Right.
couldn't get it under Sunset in order to get it over there. So by having the police now have a jet ski, so they're able to get there. That was one of the reasons why we got the rescue boat in the fire department, which that was a generous donation from the Donahue family.
Very generous.
It was, but that allowed us, that was one of the challenges we had prior to that. It was if something happened in Flint Pond, south of Route 20, the police boat was in the water in the lake, but it couldn't get there.
Couldn't get to
Couldn't
the
get under the bridge. So by us having a smaller boat that was on a trailer that we could put in anywhere, that gave the town the ability to respond to any waterway in the community.
Do we have many house fires?
So we had one Wednesday night. We had a small fire. It was in a 2-family. It was a very small fire. It started in the exhaust fan and bathroom exhaust fan. It was electrical fire. Burnt a little bit in the attic, and again, it was the firefighters were there in a minute. I happened to hear it, and so I was there pretty quick. I heard the initial call and went over, but it was about 7:00 in the evening. Firefighters did a great job, and they didn't even have to advance a hose in the building. They went in with what we call a water can, so it was a 2.5-gallon water extinguisher. They were able to get right up there. They saw where it was. They pulled the ceiling quickly. They were able to knock it down with the water extinguisher. We had the wiring inspector come, and they were able to isolate the breakers.
And that's to the credit of the response time.
Right. So we get a lot of those, little fires like that because we're able to get there quick and the firefighters are trained and know how to respond, they're able to knock them down quick. It's very rare that we would have a fire that goes beyond one hose line. So most of the time we pull the initial hose off the pump, we go in and typically we're able to put it out. Most of the time just with the water that's in the tank in the truck. Typically by the time we get hooked up to the hydrant, the fire is knocked down. And again, that's because of our 3 stations and being able to get there quick. And
You know, I ride through some towns and I think one fire station. I mean, for, you know, a substantial area, I'm surprised that they think that's a good idea.
They're probably advocating for more stations. I know it. Not to speak ill of it at all. I know it's a challenge for Westboro with only having the one building, and compromises. That's probably a bad word. Response time, or makes response times longer. But, and not to switch back, but you know, one of the other things that we're well equipped for because of the Donahue family on the lake, which is unique, is to be able to. We have a hovercraft to be able to do cold water and ice rescues, which is quite a unique ability of ours, I think. And we use it regionally is in swamps and other things like that.
And do we have firefighters that scuba dive?
we don't.
No.
We don't. We
Is that
have
just Worcester?
Yes, we have a few that do recreational diving, but nothing.
Not the same.
Yeah, not the same. So any water or ice response on the lake is typically a joint response with Shrewsbury and Worcester. Worcester has a dive team,
Yeah.
and they, depending on the shift, their goal, as far as I know, it always was to have 2 divers on duty, and that was what they strived for, to be somewhere within the city to have 2. So anytime we get a call there,
Worcester response.
we respond with them. We're part of Fire District 14, and the district has several specialty teams, and one of them is a dive team. So we can call them, and they would come in as well. And there's firefighters from Westboro, Northboro, Framingham, Natick that make up that team, and they would respond as well.
And you were the coordinator for emergency management? Are you still?
Still am, yeah. So I'm the emergency management director.
And so will you continue with that, or does that go to someone else?
No, I'm as of for now anyway. I'm going to continue with it. We'll see what the future brings, but the plan is to continue with it. And again, I have some great people that help. Dave Fosher is sergeant with the police department. He's the deputy emergency
Yes.
management director. So he's great and fills in the pieces. And so it's a team effort. Everybody contributes, and not even just in public safety, across, kind of across the whole town. That's one of the things. So we have a new public facilities division manager, and he came up to the station the other day, and we met with him to kind of go through our needs and the buildings and everything. And I asked him, I said, it's been, I think, about a little over a month. And I said, how's the thing, how's the job, you settling in and all that? And one of his comments was he referenced the collaboration between all the departments. And that's certainly not.
He was
the
impressed by it?
Yes, yeah, and that's certainly not the first time that I've heard that. And relative to emergency management, all the departments kind of chip in, and even ones that you wouldn't normally think of as emergency services. If we have a heat wave in the summer, the library and the senior center jump in, and they become a cooling center.
Highway department?
Highway department, yeah, absolutely right. If you can't get down the road, you can have all the police and firefighters you want. If you can't get there, it doesn't do you any good. The town is just starting to redo the hazard mitigation plan, to update the hazard mitigation plan. That was through a grant.
Don't you have to do that every year, is it?
No, it's not every year. It's every 3 to 5.
Oh.
Yeah, every 5 years. So
You have to pick numbers, right? You have to pick numbers. How do you rank this as a hazard to your...
yeah, so it's a whole big process.
I mean, including weather.
Yeah, and honestly, so that was a grant opportunity came in through MEMA, through the state, and I sent it over. And Chris McGoldrick, in the planning, he actually wrote the grant and got it. So the planning department is taking the lead and running with it, but certainly all the departments are going to contribute to that. Police, fire, DPW, engineering, everything about engineering and the dams and stormwater management and just the capacity not even to meet all the requirements for stormwater management, but the capacity of the catch basins and the drains and everything as we get these more severe weather systems and heavy rain. When every couple of years we get a once in 100-year rainstorm, right? The capacity to be able to direct that water where it needs to go and try to prevent localized flooding. So it really is a team effort across the whole town.
And how often do you have emergency management drills?
Oh, well, we have meetings several times throughout the course of the year.
So you have tabletop
We have
drills.
tabletop drills, and sometimes we do them regionally. You know, maybe it was more than a year ago, but recently we did a hurricane preparedness tabletop exercise with the town of Westboro, and really got into that. And while we're talking about this, just, you know, thoughts are with our local government colleagues in Western North Carolina and the Carolinas. They're just devastated down there right now. And I know they're looking for a lot of support, and had a conversation with a manager down there just last evening, and it's just unbelievable what they're dealing with. But yeah, we do have regular exercises. The last one we did was in May, I think was our last tabletop.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so very regularly and very important, and they're meaningful because the one in May, we found, I'm not going to share it, but we found a major flaw in how we thought about what would happen if, you know, there was an incident in one of our buildings. So we'll shape that and think about it differently next time. Yeah.
So a lot of work behind the scenes, and in between these drills, there's an awful lot of work and preparation and improvement that takes place. So do you have outside evaluators for that, or do you do it within the town? Or how do you do that?
We normally have representatives from MEMA, Mass Emergency Management, either running the event for us and critiquing us and challenging us and changing scenarios and making it harder. Yeah.
And do we have many brush fires anymore compared to, there used to be brush fires all the time.
Well, we're running out of brush.
That's what I was thinking.
There's a lot less brush than we used to have. This past year, we didn't. It was a very quiet season for brush fires. The 2 years prior to that was very busy. Were very busy years for brush fire, and not just in Shrewsbury, just across the state. And that's one of the things that everybody's relying more and more on is mutual aid and working together. And the year before, there was a brush fire in Northborough that was, I think it came out around 110 acres that had burnt. And there's a whole statewide fire mobilization plan where they'll take a task force from one area and move it into another area to help. And so this year was quiet, just based on the weather, right? It wasn't a super rainy year, but it was spread out nicely. That kept everything damp, whereas the years before we had long periods without rain. And
So is there any kind of forest management within the town?
No, not like you may hear about or see, you know, out west. Or, you know, we don't have that. Fortunate not have that amount of density, and we have a lot more wetland features within our forest that help, you know, reduce the need for that. But yeah, we don't do any of that. I think our biggest forest service is really the removal of dead public trees that are more hazards in and of themselves than concerned with forest fires or brush fires.
And there's so much construction now, and everything looks like wood. Why are they allowing all that wood as opposed to steel? I mean, why would you build an apartment building and want to live on the third floor of a building made of sticks?
Because it's safer.
That's what they say, but I don't believe them. What do you think?
I think that's a question for the building inspector.
Because,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
everywhere you go, you see these big buildings, not just Shrewsbury, everywhere, and they're made out of wood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, the code does allow.
And they go, oh, it's better wood. It's wood that doesn't this and that. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to the third floor to live.
No, I agree. The code keeps allowing larger and larger buildings and taller buildings to be built out of wood. I mean, the advantage from the fire department perspective is that they're all modern buildings that meet the code, so they have full sprinkler systems throughout, including all the void spaces, and they are wood, but it all has to be protected, fire rated, so it's enclosed with sheetrock, and the other thing is insulation.
Yeah.
The project, the project at 526 Hartford Pike, the walls, I think they're 18 inches thick, between the insulation, the layers, the multiple layers of insulation that they have to meet the energy codes and all of that.
Wow. You know what it makes me think of? A lot of the buildings that were built in the 80s were, we look at them now and go, why did they do that? It wasn't a good plan. They cut corners, they did this, and now I'm looking at these wooden buildings going up, and I'm thinking, in how many years is people going to be saying, what were they thinking? Why did, who were those people that allowed that? I mean, that's just my opinion. I have no background to validate any of my opinion. It's just my opinion. And so do you have more, you must have more fire inspections.
We do. That's one of our struggles that we have now, or challenges that we have now, is how to best meet all the needs of that. The deputy chief, Kevin Weigel, that's one of his big focuses is that, and he works very closely with the building inspector's office. But yeah, we do it. It takes a number of inspections for every property, and we start even before they have a plan. We start at the planning board level and looking at these projects from access, fire department access to get onto the property, to access the buildings, water supply, and then as it goes through, we work with the permitting process and we review the plans.
What about that's for new buildings, but what about existing businesses? How often do those businesses get fire inspections?
Our goal is to be in every business every year.
Mm-hmm. I just recently I won't say where, not in Shrewsbury. I was in a clothing store and I thought, who's the fire inspector in here? Like you can't move in the aisle. There's so much and it's just not safe, but I don't know why they're not being inspected.
Yeah. So we've actually, that's gotten better since I mean, we used to always have, well, what the firefighters would kind of nickname holiday harassment, where we would go out and we would do extra inspections in the retail stores starting around Thanksgiving through Christmas, mm-hmm. because retailers would bring in truckload upon truckload of extra merchandise, and that we don't do that anymore, and the need isn't really there that used to be 20, 30 years ago, because there's so much online purchase that the brick and mortar stores they're not stocking up like they used to. In fact, I think we've actually seen where storage rooms and back rooms have actually gotten smaller as they build these, because they don't need that stock anymore.
Mm. Have I forgotten to ask you any questions? Is there any point that you'd like to bring up?
No, I brought this just for a note. I wanted, a couple of plugs. One was, we talked about apparatus, and the Community Preservation Committee had supported us last year with $70,000 to restore a 1926 American LaFrance engine, fire engine. So that was the second fire engine that the town ever owned. Town bought it new in 1926, and it stayed in service until 1956. So
30.
We've always been getting that 30 years.
It hasn't changed.
Right. But Joe Milos and some of the other firefighters started this week, and they've stripped the whole thing down to the frame, and
they got to figure out how to put it back together.
They took a lot of pictures, but yeah, it's stripped down, and we're going to send it out in pieces and basically media blast, like essentially sand blast, but it's not with sand. The frame, get everything down to bare metal, and they're going to repaint it, and any mechanical issues that they find will get fixed. It was running when we got it. It was generously given back to us from Tim Treadway. He graduated from Shrewsbury High, And he currently lives down in Texas, but he donated it back to the town, and we're using those funds to get it restored. And the goal is to have it ready to go for the town's 300th.
Ooh, nice, nice.
Yeah, so there was that, and then the other plug I'll throw in there is that we're partnering. The fire department is partnering with the American Red Cross, and we're going to do smoke detector installations for residents at no charge. The smoke detectors are provided by the Red Cross, and then their members, along with our fire department members, will go out on November 9th and install them in houses throughout the community. So
Are those smoke and CO, or how does that work?
they are. The only requirement to it is the house has to have been built prior to 1975.
Oh,
And the reason for that is anything after 1975 was required to have hardwired smoke detectors, and we have to be an electrician to do that. So we can do the battery ones, so anything
Yep.
prior to 1975. But yeah, then you
that's
can,
really good.
and anybody can sign up by either calling the fire department or the Council on Aging, and we'll get you on the list and get out there.
Great. Well, I'm glad you were here. This was very informative. And I have pages of questions I have to ask you, but I just, before we go, we do have a new DPW director,
That's correct.
and that is,
Timothy McInerney.
you worked for him.
I did work for him when he was the town administrator in Grafton. I was his assistant town administrator.
So you won't take that out on him now that he's working for you?
Of course I will. No,
So-
we're excited to have Tim on board. He's a great local government professional, and excited to see his work in leading very complicated and large Department of Public Works as we plan for the future. And, from resiliency standpoint, climate resiliency, modernizing everything that we do and preserving water and sewer capacity. So there's a lot of work that we need to take on, and excited to have him start on October 15th.
Oh, I thought he already started,
Not
not till the
yet.
15th.
Yep.
Okay, and I'll just have to save the rest of these questions. We have a town meeting coming up in
November 18th. Yep.
18th.
Yep.
And how many articles?
We're not sure yet. I think it probably in the end it'll be down to about 8 to 10.
Oh, so it's
We're still working on
we're
it.
not going up to 40, 50, like
No, one night.
one night. So, and you have a lot for that one night.
Yeah. There are some heavier articles that we want to make sure have the opportunity to fully debate, but honestly, be within one night. One night's, worth of work for town meeting. So pack a lunch.
Pack a lunch, and I'll save my questions. And I'm so glad we had you here today. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.